Illini men's basketball shows up in the preseason poll at number 19. Today, I'm going to talk about why that could be too low or it could be too high.
You are Locked On Illini, your daily podcast on the Illinois Fighting Illini. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome all to another edition of Locked On Illini. Thank you all so much for making us your first listen each and every day. Today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. My name is Sonny Verma, your host here at Locked On, where I continue to provide you coverage every single day. Everything you see and hear is absolutely free. If you feel nice, if you can hit that like button, I would absolutely appreciate that. Today, I want to switch gears a little bit. I know we're kind of dominant in speaking about football, and of course, we're going to have plenty of football coverage all week long, especially with that big matchup against the Indiana Hoosiers coming up on Saturday. But I wanted to talk a little bit basketball. On Monday evening, Field of 68 released their first, I don't know if it's their first, but a preseason poll where they came out with their top 25, and Illinois came in at number 19. Now, I've kind of thought this back and forth, whether I think number 19 is too high or too low. And I want to know in the comment section, those of you who are watching, do you think Illinois is better or worse than the 19th ranked team in the country? Or do you think that Field of 68 got it right? I think there's several scenarios at play here. It's hard in the middle of September to really gauge how good this Illinois basketball team is going to be. So I wanted to give a couple scenarios why Illinois could be higher, or ultimately they could be lower than 19, maybe not top 25. I'm going to be positive. So, of course, I'm going to start with why Illinois could be higher than number 19 and why I think there's room, aggressive room, if I'm being quite honest, for Illinois to be even higher than that. My ceiling for this Illinois team is a legit top 10 team. And a lot of that is going to have to do with the injuries, which I'm going to get to a little bit more when we talk about the negative aspects of what this prediction could look like. But if, I'm not counting on Rodgers to be playing much this year. So I'm just going to take him mentally out of the outlook for this upcoming season. Andrej Stojakovic, we also know, is hurt. Now, I don't think Andrej is a long-term injury, but I do think it's something where he'll probably be out for a couple weeks to a month. Again, Brad Underwood and the coaching staff, they don't really say much nowadays, and they don't really leak much. So it's that information will get out when Brad Underwood and the coaching staff wants it to get out. But me being about 8 years short of my medical degree, I'm going to go ahead and guess with that the strain or the sprain that he has. Let's just say 4 to 6 weeks. Now, when did he get that injury? I don't know. So again, I think he'll be ready in time for the first game of the season. Let me simplify that for you. If Stojakovic is good to go, and you have Mihailo Petrovic, who's now finally on campus practicing with the team, I think one of the most important jobs that not just Brad Underwood has, but Tomislav Ivicic and Kylan Boswell are going to have is to integrate Mihailo into this team, into this culture, and get him ready to go before we kick off this season. Because my everydayers in here know I really like Petrovic's game. And I think Petrovic could potentially be the best player on this basketball team. But in order to do that, we know Mihailo is going to be having the ball a lot. I think he's going to be the primary ball handler on this Illinois team. And he's my outside shot at winning the most assists in the entire Big Ten Conference. I truly believe that he's capable of doing that by the end of the year. It would surprise a lot of people, but I've just seen enough of him to think that I know he's got the vision, and that combined with the fact that Brad Underwood likes to build teams that like to move at a fast pace, that are going to spread the ball around, and hopefully shooters. We didn't quite necessarily have the shooters last year, but I think the law of averages is going to catch up, and I do think that hopefully we're going to be making more three-pointers than we did previously, and I think Mihailo Petrovic will play a big role in finding some of these guys these open looks. Also, I need to address David Mirkovic and Keaton Wagler, who, again, from everything I've heard, has surprised a lot of people during the summer the summer playing that the team has done together. They knew that Wagler and Mirkovic would have roles on this team, but I think the expectation was minimal roles, typical freshman roles. But I think that the way they've played and what they've displayed over the offseason to some of this coaching staff now has them realizing that, Keaton and David are not just going to be a part of the rotation, but I mean, a guy like David is even in the running for the starting power forward spot at this point. I wouldn't say he's the favorite, but I think just the fact that he's in the discussion at this point is a very pleasant surprise. If David and Keaton are some two guys that you can count on in the rotation, now you're talking about a rotation that goes 8 to 9 deep, with the expectation that Tomislav Ivičić can level up one more season. Again, most players show their best improvements from year 1 to year 2. So if you take into account that, and Tomislav Ivičić goes from, I already think he's the best center in the Big Ten Conference this year. I know some people say Biddle from Oregon is, but I think Tomislav is the best center in the Big Ten Conference. And I think he has the potential to get even better than that. I think he has the potential to get in that All-American conversation. Then you have Kylan Boswell, who we know is going to be playing his last year in college basketball. And he's gotten super serious about his work on the court. You see it because of the work he's doing off the court. Almost anytime there's a social media post, or, even Ayo Dosunmu, let me put this as an example. Ayo Dosunmu released a 40-minute vlog of him visiting Champaign and him working out with Adam Fletcher. And you know who was working out with him? It was Kylan Boswell. Kylan understands, again, it being his last year, this is his last chance to make the improvements necessary in order to be talked about playing at the next level. I've seen him at the end of some mock drafts, but most mock drafts, he's kind of one of the first guys out. He's got the build for it, but it's going to be his 4th year in college basketball now. And so in a best case scenario, if Kylan really takes on his role, not just as a valued backcourt, he's going to be starting, of course, in the backcourt, but he really looks like he relishes the role of being the captain of this basketball team. And if Kylan has his mind right, I think he can be heck of a captain. And the fact that he's a hometown kid has a potential of the story ending really, really well. So you have Tommy, you have Mihailo, you have Kylan Boswell. I've already discussed those guys. I talked about two guys who were unexpectedly now becoming potential rotational pieces in Keaton Wagler and David Mirkovic having bigger roles than originally expected. If Stojakovic does come back and he shows glimpses of the player he was last year, his sophomore year at Cal, where he averaged 18 points per game in the ACC. Now you're talking about a team that's not just deep, but very veteran, very old. And in my opinion, at least when you look at recent history, you want a team that is older. And I think that's the reason that Brad Underwood and Orlando Antigua and that staff has kind of shifted their focus from focusing so much of their energy and potential financial resources on those young guys, on those high school preps. Now, I know this doesn't make you guys happy. I know the Locked On audience, every time I make another video of a commit who's in the rankings in the 100s or 150s, there's a hint of panic in your voices, in the comments that I receive in those type of videos. But I genuinely think that this is by design. I think Brad, I've said this before on the show, they want to invest in really good college basketball players who have been there before, who aren't going to get rattled, who you don't have to necessarily go through the ups and downs with. And so in a way, Brad said it himself a couple of weeks ago that this team has the highest ceiling of any that he's coached. And he said that while acknowledging Coleman Hawkins and Terrence Shannon Jr., who were in the audience. I don't think he's lying. And I think the reason he said that is exactly what I just mentioned. It looks like it's a very veteran group and a very talented group. And I don't know if Brad necessarily has ever had that in combination. So it's something I'm really looking forward to. And for that reason, I do think that there's a chance that Illinois could be ranked higher than 19. And again, if it's up to me, I lean higher. But I also tend to be a little bit more optimistic, as some of you like to point out. I think this is a top 10 team. I think Mihailo is as good as I think he is. is certainly a top 12 team, worst case. Obviously, the biggest questions I have are about defense, and I guess I'll get to that on the other side of this break. This episode is brought to you by Prize Picks, the daily fantasy app where making the right call can actually pay off. You and I make decisions every day, but on Prize Picks, being right means cashing in. With football back, Prize Picks is the simplest and fastest way to get in on the action. Just pick more or less on 2 to 6 player projections, and you can turn your takes into real prizes, all in less than 60 seconds. It's quick, easy, and honestly, one of my favorite ways to follow along with football. I love checking projections to see Josh Allen over or under 270 pounds. Does Saquon Barkley score a touchdown or not? And the best part, even if one of your picks misses, Prize Picks invented the flex play, so you can still double your money. Download the Prize Picks app today and use code LOCKEDONCollege to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. That's code LOCKEDONCollege for $50 in lineups after your first $5 play. Prize Picks. It's good to be right. And welcome back. And special shout out to Mark, who pointed out that I said 270 pounds for Josh Allen in that last ad. I'm going to have to do that one over again. Okay, so we talked about how Illinois could go higher than ranked number 19. But of course, there is always going to be a scenario where Illinois finishes worse than number 19th. And whether that's in the 20s or just not ranked in the top 25 altogether. There's certainly some ways that can happen. And first and foremost, again, I'm going to go with the assumption that Ty Rodgers, best case scenario, does not play until 2026. And that's for positive or negative. I haven't heard anything otherwise. So I'm going to get that out of the way. We know Stojakovic is hurt right now. And so let's just say that injury maybe heals, but it continues to linger. Now, Illinois has gotten relatively lucky over the last few years when it comes to injuries. You know, of course, we did have Morez Johnson getting hurt last year, but we also had Tomislav Visic get sick. And so we haven't been so lucky on the sickness side, but we have been pretty lucky when it comes to injuries. What if that luck starts to run out at this point? If Stojakovic's injury lurks and lingers a little bit, now all of a sudden the excitement of being able to use Keaton Wagler, to me, gets a little tempered, because I think the excitement of using Keaton Wagler is as a rotational piece. Maybe your 7th guy, maybe your 8th guy, you think you have a gamer, but you don't want to play Keaton significant minutes as a starting 3 in the Big Ten Conference. He may be good. I don't know if he's that necessarily good. I don't think the staff necessarily thinks he's that good. He can surprise us all, but all of a sudden, if you have Keaton in the number 3 hole instead of Andrej Stojakovic, I think the ceiling on your team changes drastically, mainly because, well, Stojakovic, as I mentioned, scored 18 points a game last year. And we're kind of counting on that scoring output this year, because Stojakovic is one of those guys who may be the leading scorer on this team next season. I think it's between him, Tommy, and maybe Mihailo, but I think it's probably between him and Tomislav. And so if you have a guy who in the preseason you think is going to be your second highest scorer gone, well, where are those points going to be made up? Now, I mentioned Mihailo in the positive aspect in the previous segment, but there's also a way things can go wrong. Let's say Mihailo, who's here, who's practicing with the team. We know that all summer long that this basketball team was practicing without without Mihailo, because Mihailo just wasn't on campus yet. Well, now Mihailo is on campus, but now Andrej is not on campus. So this team is missing valuable time to really build that on-the-court chemistry. And in my opinion, chemistry matters more in basketball than almost any other sport. Just the way the game flows, the way you need to know the intricacies of where your fellow teammates want to be, where they like to play, their strengths, their weaknesses. Illinois is missing that. And I do think like that's what I'm envious about when it comes to Purdue, and their style of building rosters. It's almost the same group of guys every single year. So by year 2, by year 3, these guys know each other in and out. Illinois, has gone a different route, which I understand, and I'm not against it at all. But in order to maximize what your team looks like when the basketball season starts, you need to maximize the time that they're together and to gel together before the season starts. And Illinois, unfortunately, hasn't had that chance yet. They haven't had time to really build their chemistry. Let's just say Andrej is out for another month, okay, and he comes back mid-October. Well, at that point, this team only has about a month to really practice with one another. You're going to have to expedite everything. You're going to have to crunch all that time that you missed into a 1 month span. And is that going to be enough time? I don't know. That's kind of what we're all going to have to sit here and wonder, because if that chemistry isn't built, well, then Illinois has a very, very tough non-conference schedule. And, again, when you're talking about worst case scenarios, if you come out on the losing end for the majority of those non-conference games, well, then what does that do to the psyche of the team? What does that do just to the vibes in the locker room? And, hey, is this going to be a throwaway season? So chemistry, I think, is hugely important. And of course, at the same time, something I'm genuinely right now, as I sit here, concerned about. Also, I've sat here for a summer now, at least since his commitment, telling you how good of a player Mihailo Petrovic is going to be. What if he's not? What if I'm wrong? This won't be the first time I'm wrong, but Mihailo, as well as he's played in the Adriatic League, well, it's the Adriatic League. And while I know there are certainly talented players out there, I don't want to undermine how difficult it can be to come to a completely different country, to come to a completely different culture, and just to assimilate right away. For us, we think it's just a basketball court. You need, it shouldn't be that hard. But in his position, he's got to get used to a brand new country, brand new rules, a language barrier. We've gotten very lucky, very fortunate in Tomislav and some of the other guys in the past and how quickly they've adapted. And this is not me disrespecting Mihailo in any sort of way. What I'm saying is each and every one of these cases have to be a case-by-case base. I mean, it's one of those where, things could go wrong. And what if Mihailo ultimately, now keep in mind, Mihailo's, I think, 22 years old. I know he looks older than that, but he's like 22 years old, maybe 23. I forget. He's an adult at this point. He's going to be coming back to play with college kids. If things don't start off on the right track, you wonder, is there a chance where he ultimately, in the second half of the season or at the end of the season, kind of maybe mentally checks out, saying, you know what, this is not for me. I collected a nice paycheck, but I'm already packing mentally to go back to Europe. And I'm going to go ahead and continue being a star over there and continuing to collect money over there. Now, again, I don't think that's going to happen. And so don't clip me saying that. If you do, that's fine. But then also acknowledge I'm probably the biggest Mihailo supporter that you see online. But I'm just saying that could be a scenario that we have to be concerned about. What if the offseason workouts between Keaton and David are hype? Let's be honest. I love our head coach, Brad Underwood. But if there's one thing Brad Underwood is known for, in particular in the offseason, is to talk in hyperbole. He called Mark Smith a version of Jason Kidd. I think he said, Mark resembled Jason Kidd to him, and Mark Smith didn't survive a year. I think, there's always a chance at opportunity. Now, I will say the things I've heard about David and Keaton are not from Brad. I've heard it from my own independent sources. So that, take that into account. But again, what if the summer program, the off-season program, is just a little bit different? And, once the season starts, David, of course, being a big in the Big Ten, what does that mean? No matter how talented you are, no matter how highly ranked you are, if you are a big in the Big Ten Conference, the referees are going to call fouls on you. And so there's a chance that David Mirkovic is a guy who we hope to count on, but ends up being a guy who only plays 5-7 minutes a game because he comes into the game and he picks up 2-3 quick fouls. Keaton Wagler, again, we see hints of the scoring there. But what if he's just simply not ready for a bigger role? I think when we originally brought him in, it was with the idea that he'd probably be the last guy in the rotation, maybe the ninth guy. Maybe that's just what he is. Maybe he's not ready to be a guy that's ready to play meaningful moments. So, taking all of those into account, chemistry, I think, is the biggest one. And the one I know Brad has to understand that, then they're going to work on that. But how much can you actually work on chemistry? I mean, it's nice that some of these players are taking vacations together and stuff like that. And I mean that. I'm not mocking that in any sort of way. I like that. Spend time with one another. But ultimately, it's the chemistry on the basketball court that's going to matter. And those guys really aren't having that time to spend on the basketball court. Mihailo, hopefully he transitions over pretty well. And hopefully Andrej Stojakovic's injury is not something that lingers. Hopefully this is something that's wrapped up quickly and we can forget about it and move on once the season starts. But all those do factor into scenarios that I think that Illinois could end up finishing worse than the number 19 team in the country. Again, let me know your thoughts. Which side do you side with more? Higher than 19, lower than 19? I'm curious. College football is back, and I couldn't be more excited. The tailgates, the rivalries, the energy in the stands, there's just nothing like it. But let's be real, actually getting tickets can feel like more of a battle than the game itself. Endless queues, hidden fees, prices jumping at checkout. That's why I use Game Time, the app that gives the advantage back to the fans. It's the easiest way to score last-minute tickets at the best prices with no surprise fees. What you see is what you pay. I pull up Game Time every time I'm thinking about going to a game. I see the price and I click on the button so I can see exactly what the view from my seat is going to be. If I like it, I'll go ahead and purchase a ticket. It makes it that easy. So take the guesswork out of buying college football tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, the promo code LOCKEDONCOLLEGE for $20 off. Swipe, tap, ticket. Go. Download Game Time today. So it looks like I'm not going to have time to do the What the Coaches Said segment today. Again, that's something that you guys requested. It's basically, I do this all the time, right? You can find me on all your favorite social medias at Talk Illini or at TheSunnyV, or you can just directly email me at talkillini@gmail.com. If you have some input on what you guys want me to talk about, maybe segment ideas, and one that's come up more often than not is some of you say, I'm a part of your every drive every morning. And by the way, hearing those words makes me feel so wonderful. Thank you so much. I'm so humbled to hear something like that. But you also say that I wrap everything up for you guys to let you guys know what's going on with Illini content each and every day. Obviously, Brett Bielema and the coaching staff do their press conferences about twice a week or so, and you don't have time to listen to them. So you guys ask me to kind of read them, or take some notes, and then kind of wrap it up for you guys in shorter words. And so I'm going to do that moving forward. Again, I don't have time today because we're almost at that limit already. So maybe what I'll do is I'll push that to tomorrow's episode or maybe on Thursday's episode. But I promise I will get to that. I did want to acknowledge a couple things that a lot of folks were talking about, in particular in the Talk Illini Discord. The link is in the description, by the way. Again, we're talking Illini sports all day, every day. Luke Goode apparently is back on campus, and there was a picture posted of him wearing Illini gear, working out with the Illini. I don't know if it was with the Illini basketball team or if it was just with Fletcher or what it might be. But, obviously this caused a lot of controversy, some people upset, some people happy about seeing him here when we all know the story of Luke Goode, a guy who played with us for a few seasons and then decided to transfer out to the Indiana Hoosiers, who, by the way, we also happen to be playing on Saturday. I'll be honest. I think having Luke in Illini gear on the week of a match is a huge advertisement. I can't think of a single negative angle to this. Now, I was never really upset with Luke for leaving to begin with. We know It was his childhood favorite basketball team, the Indiana Hoosiers. But we also knew that Luke really wanted to make it work at Illinois. Luke, despite what might have been better for him in the long term, it might have been better for him to have sat out that one season, but he ended up coming back in what was like February, and he ended up losing a year of eligibility that year. And obviously this year he tried to get it back, but he was denied. So he's now done playing college basketball. But Luke Goode is the type of player who wanted to make it work here at Illinois so incredibly bad. And it just unfortunately didn't. And so I think Luke had the opportunity to go home, make a lot more money, and quite honestly, play a bigger role with the Indiana Hoosiers, his hometown childhood favorite basketball team. And so taking all those scenarios into account, I have no ill will towards Luke. Not like the Morez situation, where we tried to keep him and where Morez and maybe some family members or his inner circle were being dishonest about certain things. That one, I don't have great vibes about, but Luke, I never had an issue with. And ultimately, like I said, we've had Io coming back to work with Fletch. We've had Terrence Shannon Jr. We've had Marcus Damask. We've had Coleman Hawkins. That's just off the top of my head. All these guys, Kasparis, have all come back to the Ubin campus, to the University of Illinois, to work out with the guy who I think is the best in the business. That right there is what you show to recruits. You know what? Illinois and Indiana, whether the other side acknowledges it or not, are rivals, whether they like it or not. In particular with basketball, we know Indiana is one of the few teams in the country that can outspend Illinois. Well, Illinois and Indiana do tend to go after a similar caliber type of basketball player. And you don't think that when Brad Underwood comes into the living room of a prospect who is also being recruited by Indiana, that he's going to be pulling up that picture? That, hey, look, this guy, he played with Illinois and he's played with Indiana. He's come back home. Champaign is home. That's where he's comes to better himself. He knows the workout plan we have is the best that you're not going to find anywhere else in the country. Stuff like that matters. And I think it's not a fluke. It's not a mistake that picture got leaked out of Luke working out in Champaign. I think that's absolutely by design. And if you're an Illini fan, there's no way you should be upset in any sort of manner about that coming out. Because this is, if anything else, go take a screenshot and send it to the Hoosier friends you might have that are talking trash right now. Because Luke knows that it doesn't matter if he was wearing Indiana pajamas as a 5-year-old. Luke Altmaier knows where home is. It's another big moment on Locked On college football fans. Locked On and Fire TV present College Football Kickoff, your ultimate college football weekly preview. Drake Toll of Locked On Big 12 leads the conversation alongside two-time AP Coach of the Year Gary Patterson, former college star Jesse Holley, and Locked On's college local experts. A college football preview only Locked On can do. Catch College Football Kickoff every Thursday throughout the season, only on Fire TV. On your way out, please hit the like button, and if you don't mind, find me on your favorite audio platform, and please leave me a 5-star review. Those have slowed down a little bit. The audio numbers are fantastic, but just remember that helps continue this channel to grow, and it gives me more resources to continue to provide you coverage every single day, and not just coverage, but top-notch coverage. So I appreciate each and every one of you. Until next time, ILL. Love you guys.